Hello, everybody. Welcome to Leadership Tallahassee. Tallahassee Leads here. This is the latest edition of that. And my name is Kenneth Pratt. I'm with Florida Bankers Association, also LT Class 20. And first of all, I want to thank all of our Leon County delegation for being here today. This is fulfilling the mission of LT, which we know is to provide community programming to keep you informed about the issues that affect our community. We've been doing these forums for a couple of years, well, for quite a few years now. And so we want to continue in that series of finding out what's happening in our state capitol with our Leon County delegation. A couple of housekeeping items I want to go through. If you all would rename yourself, if you're a participant, rename yourself with your name and also your class number so that we know who we're calling on when we call on you, if you have a class number. And then also want to let everybody know this will be recorded and YouTubed and placed on the Chamber's website. So thanks to the Chamber for that. Thanks for everybody again agreeing to be here, all the participants. Let me talk a little bit about today's format. We'll do an intro and I'll ask for some remarks about the overall session and how our legislators felt about those, and then we'll get into some specific questions about the 2020 legislative session. I don't think I need to, I want a couple things about how to raise your, or how to ask questions. There's actually a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You should see that. So you can type in a question if you'd like, and we will see that and hopefully be able to get your question. So go ahead and do that. And the other way to do it is if you'd like to get actually into the chat, you can raise your hand. That's done by clicking on the participants button at the bottom. And then on the right-hand side near the bottom, you should see a button that says raise your hand. If you want to raise your hand and ask a question, do that, and then we'll call on you at the appropriate time. Let's, I don't think any of you all need a real introduction, so we're just going to open it up and get right into it. We're going to work through these alphabetically. 2 to 3 minutes on your overall impression of the 2020 legislative session. Rep. Alexander, I'm going to start with you.
Well, thank you, Kenneth, and thank you for hosting this forum. And I'll be sure to be brief on the first question. I think overall, we had some success in regards to our agenda that directly impacts our region. It was an honor working with our delegation to think strategically. This has been a build-up over many years in regards to state worker salary increases, in regards to teacher pay increases. And I think we were able to think sensible and thoughtful in a strategic way. And I think we were able to make some significant strides. I don't believe it's the end, but I think it's just the beginning. And I'm looking forward to working with our colleagues in the future to build on the success we had this past session.
Awesome. Rep. Ausley.
So I thank you also. And it's kind of hard to shift gears to go from COVID to the legislature because, you know, the timing is such that we left the legislature and went straight into this, you know, this time of that's all challenging for all of us. But I would agree with Rep. Alexander. You know, this is a budget. The budget that we passed, and I'm not sure it's going to be the budget that we end up with, but the budget that we passed was the best I have seen in most of my time in the legislature. A 3% pay raise for state employees, full funding for affordable housing, teacher pay increase, you know, environmental investing on water and on Florida Forever, and making sure that we keep Visit Florida alive. Those were all some of the highlights. I would have liked to have seen more focus on the Hurricane Michael counties, and I'm sure Rep. Shoaf and Senator Montford have something to say about that, because now more than ever we're seeing the real hurt that a Category 5 and then a pandemic on top of it is impacting our entire region. So, but it overall, leaving with the budget, it was a good session.
Nice. I'm sorry, Senator Montford, if you give us some comments.
Excuse me. Thank you, Kenneth, and thank you for your guidance, if you will, through all these years. I've been in the Senate. I'm terming out, as you know, after 10 years, but you've been a good partner in your association, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate working with my colleague, the 3-year-old here, and old Halls of Bashir that left us a little early. But it's been we've had a good session this year, I think. And, but I think we need to pause and remind people that that if you look at the way the Florida legislature works, I think it's important to recognize the fact that it's by population, obviously. And in my case, for example, there are only 3 senators in all of North Florida, and there's 6 in Miami-Dade alone. Everybody gets 1 vote. So it's critically important that all of us in North Florida, in the House and the Senate, both parties, it's important that we work together for common goals. If not, we'll come up short, quite frankly. But I think, of course, Loran just mentioned the highlights of this session. I think, though, that what's really important is we have finally recognized the importance of state employees. The state employees, quite frankly, have only had 1 raise in over 10 years. And by the way, we began a few years ago taking 3% of their salary for retirement, and that's an argument for another day. But the fact remains that we have fewer state employees per capita than the other state in the country. Our state employees, we're blessed to have them. The danger is if we don't take care of our state employees, we will not continue to attract bright young people coming into public service. Recognizing the fact that we need to give them a raise, that's hugely important to us this year. And then same thing with teachers as well. We know the quality of our public education rests on the shoulders of our classroom teachers and the support system. So those are 2 good areas I think that we need to focus on and recognize. There's some things we locally got done. We fixed the Benton Hills issue, which a lot of people around here know about. And we were able to rectify that most unfortunate historical situation statewide. That was certainly a good move, not only for Leon County, but for the state as well. One of the things we didn't get through, that was my bill, and that was to ban fracking throughout Florida. We were not allowed to get that across the finish line, but we came closer than we ever have before. So I believe that that's in the future. But thanks again for inviting us to be a part of this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator. Rep. Shoaf, an overview.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Well, for those of you I haven't met before, I have never been in politics before, not on a local level, city, county, state, anything. I've always been in small business. And so it was quite a transition being my first year in the legislature in my first session. Learned an awful lot, really leaned on the others in this room to help learn the ins and outs of the Capitol building and where the restrooms were and all of that. But overall, I would say that session went well. We didn't get all that we wanted, but I feel good about what we did get. Plan to continue to fight for vocational education opportunities, training for our young school age kids, and on the flip side, turn around and help grow career opportunities in North Florida.
Awesome. Dovetailing on what you all were just talking about, and certainly we're an interesting community because we have so many state employees. We all know there's been some problems with our the state's unemployment claims website and getting those funds to folks who are in need right now. So just wondering if you all have an update, or if you all can provide some additional information, or what you all are hearing out there from your constituents in regards to the state's unemployment claims website. And Rep. Ausley, I'm going to start with you on that question.
Well, it's a broken mess, and there's no other way to describe it. There are people, you're hearing the dings come across my computer, and almost every one of them is one of my, not even just constituents, people from across the state that are just at the end of their rope, frustrated because they can't get answers. So I'm trying to work on a daily basis with DEO, Secretary Satter, his legislative team. I know that they have people working around the clock, legislative aides from other agencies and other staff that are trying to hand walk through we have a list of 150 that we are tracking, but we send it over and then it's sort of another dead end. So I don't know if anyone else has any other, I don't even know what else to say about it. It is a broken system. We've spent $100 million to try to make it work. And it's doesn't make any sense to point fingers right now. What we need to do is get the dang thing fixed and get the people the help that they need.
Awesome. Senator Montford, did you have some comments on the unemployment system claims website?
Yeah, let's face it. If you go back and look at the history of how we got into the position we're in now, it started back in 2013, quite frankly, when we went to the current system that we're in. And the system obviously doesn't work. I don't think anybody would deny that it does not work. The question now is, how do we resolve the problem? It's like trying to change a flat tire while you're driving down the road. We've got so many people, state employees and others, working on the issue right now. But quite frankly, it's not something that you can just walk out of one office and walk into this situation and be able to provide answers. One of the critical pieces of this is that a lot of people who are on the receiving end of these calls are not experienced enough and don't know the system well enough to be able to walk people through the system. And again, what's the answer to this? I think the answer is to be as lenient as possible. We've got to look at these people as individual people. I had a man that recently called me, a constituent, and another real life case. He said, I've worked all my life. I've got 4 teenagers at home. I've got a gallon of milk left, and that's it. I don't have enough money to buy gas to go down to pick up some of the food that's being distributed. So obviously we took care of that individual and thousands of others across the state. The fact remains, we've got to move quickly. This should be a top priority of the state to fix this system. Every day that goes by, it just gets worse. So I don't know, COVID-19 is a tremendous issue to the state. But this issue comes right behind it because we literally have people going hungry because the system doesn't work.
Yeah. Rep. Shoaf, what are you seeing in your areas?
Well, I tell you, it's a massive failure, and people work, they pay into unemployment, and when we need it most, the system has failed. And I like the analogy that Senator Montford got. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to change the tire while you're driving down the road. That really sums it up. We have to break down this system piece by piece, figure out where it went wrong, and put it back together in a way that serves Floridians. And again, I don't have words for this. We are holding hands. We are helping our constituents through this. And I've had some of the most frustrating experiences in years trying to find a way to help get answers. But I'm committed to doing everything necessary to make sure that we don't repeat this government mistake.
Yeah, thank you, Rep. Rep. Alexander, any comments on this?
Yeah, I will be very brief. When you hear the tears and frustrations of your constituents trying to work through a process, and particularly our independent contractors, you kind of got stuck in the middle and had significant challenges and still having significant challenges with the system. And to be quite frank, I know we aren't to that point yet, but there has to be a high level of accountability. This COVID-19 experience has exposed so many of the challenges that we face as a state and as a nation. And I think we have an obligation to look at it in a structured way so that we can move forward and hold people accountable. Yeah, you spend $70 million to build a system, you spend millions and millions or more to try to correct the system. Something isn't right. And I'm calling for a full investigation, independent investigation on the system so that we never put the people of Florida in this type of situation again. We are here to serve all, the least of these, to be a voice for everyone. And when people are struggling and crying out that have done the things they need to do, and the system continues to fail, that is significant. And I look forward to using my next 4 years in the legislature to create transparency and hold people accountable to ensure that people are represented in a fair and decent way.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rep. Thank you to each of you all for your comments on that. I know you all are working hard to get that get that situation resolved. We here at Florida Bankers are working hard to make sure that the PPP loans get out to folks in small businesses. And if you have if you all know of your friends who are small business owners, that money is actually, there's still some money available in that pot. We're surprised that money is still there at this particular point, but please, I invite them all to go to see an FDIC insured bank and make sure that they get the money that will help them continue their business. Small business we know it's the backbone of our economy. So just want to make that plug out there to make sure that all small businesses know that money's still available. Want to shift gears a little bit to talk about the budget from each of you all and your perspectives on that, and include any special projects that you know that will be of assistance to our community. But just want to hear you all, your impressions on the budget process. And for that, we'll start with Senator Montford.
Thank you, Kenneth. I think if you look over, our district or my district, North Florida, we did fairly well. There's, in addition to the Benton Hills issue that I mentioned to you, as well, I think the fact that we preserved Florida A&M and the University of Florida as being two church universities when it comes to the HELP program. There was a move to destabilize that, if you will, but we insisted that we adhere to the original agreement, and that was two universities, both Florida State and University of Florida and Florida A&M University. That was huge for Florida A&M University. We also continue to focus on mental health in this area. We know that the mental health crisis is alive and well, even more so now because of COVID-19. But we focus on that this section, which I thought was exceptionally well. And again, of course, we've got so many state employees here. The fact, again, about the state employee raise, I can't overemphasize that enough, not only for those individuals, but for our economy in North Florida as well. If you look at the number of, got thousands of state employees in North Florida. A lot of them work here in Tallahassee and the surrounding areas, but I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that if we don't treat state employees well, fairly, then the whole economy hurts. And then there's other issues I think that we focused on this year, and it's justice reform. We didn't get as far as we wanted to, but I think we have to continue to look at that in the future. In my Senate district, I have 9 prisons. So outside of school districts, the prisons are the largest employees that I have in my district, other than Tallahassee and Leon County. So I think the fact that from a moral standpoint, I think it's time for us to look and revising the whole judicial process in terms of incarceration. How do we deal with this? We cannot continue down the path that we're on. So I think that's long overdue. But the good thing is it's a bipartisan issue now. Both parties agree to this, and I think you'll see tremendous changes for the good in the next 2 or 3 years.
Awesome. Rep. Shoaf?
Well, I think that, again, being my first session, I feel that we passed a balanced, conservative budget for our state. We have no state income tax, so our budget relies heavily on revenue created by state sales tax, which we all know is up in the air at this point. So I'm looking forward to getting those numbers and seeing how we are going to make the best of this. But for now, the $93 billion budget, we planned it, balanced spending and saving, has a rainy day fund, and sets aside $60 million for the coronavirus response. It also includes raises for full-time teachers. There's over $500 million committed to increase the pay for teachers across the state. If my math is correct, Leon County alone benefited from the budget to the tune of just over $1 billion. So hopefully we'll have to wait and see what the final budget is signed by the governor. But I think I agree with Rep. Ausley. I think this was a good budget, and look forward to seeing how it's finalized.
Awesome. Rep. Alexander, your comments on the budget and the budget process.
Well, I think the answers given by my colleagues were excellent responses. Senator Montford covered some of the hemp challenges in the fight in regards to keeping Florida A&M University whole. But I'm also excited about the funding secured for the FAMU FSU College of Engineering, funding secured for Tallahassee Community College, particularly the nursing program. We're able to get them some excellent dollars, as well as funding for Florida A&M University. And many of our special projects, our Leon County Junior Apprenticeship Program, and many other programs that we were able to keep whole. I think another storyline is not just about the funding we were able to secure, but a lot of the funding that was not cut. During the budget exercises, many dollars were cut across the board. And we, based off our relationships in the legislature, were able to walk those things back and explain the significant value of those projects and work in a very strategic and methodical way to bring those resources back to our communities that make a huge impact. So overall, that's my take on it. We did have some significant wins and looking forward to the future as we work together to bring home more resources for our community.
Awesome. Sounds like it was a good job, that you all did a great job on bringing home some of those dollars that our community needs. Want to shift gears again to just talk about the most impactful bill that you think might impact our community, and in your opinion. And for that question, we'll go to Rep. Shoaf for your comments.
Well, my number one priority since I got into this race and into office has been vocational education, really propping that up and to provide high-end training and regular training, however you want to say it. We have so many opportunities in North Florida. And, Senator Montford and I sponsored a bill this year. 957 was the House side. Senator, I don't remember the Senate side, but I believe your side passed.
I don't either.
But its designation of school grades and its intent was to provide schools with school grade acceleration points for students enrolled in competing in CTE courses. It incentivizes the schools to let kids go on that path if that's what they truly want. And so very proud of that bill passing and really enjoyed working with Senator Montford on that. We've had another one that was very important for North Florida is the correctional officer pay raise, which has been mentioned several times today. They desperately need that raise, and so we were able to get that one through. And also I'd say the third most important would be the state employee raise and teacher raise, kind of neck and neck there. They're both so important, and this year we were able to get both across the finish line.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the work you all are doing in getting technical folks that want to go into those different areas. I know the last couple sessions, there's been quite a bit of work done in those areas, and thank you all for what you all are doing there. I think that's the right move for our state to put some more emphasis on getting kids in the right direction there. Rep. Alexander, you're next up. What were your thoughts about an impactful bill that impacted your community in 2020 session?
So very good question, and Representative Shoaf did a great job of summing up some of the policy concerns that we focused on. I will say that working in the higher education silo that directly impacts our state universities, which play in our community college here and technical colleges throughout the region, they play a vital part of our economic strata here in North Florida. We were able to really make significant improvements to a large policy bill in regards to Pell Grant dollars and Pell Grant metrics being measured as a tool for students, which will subsequently be a benefit to Florida State University, be a benefit to Florida A&M University as we move forward. I think there has to be emphasis that we don't make access to education this elite dream where regardless of what your background is and what your situation is, that you can have access to those opportunities. So that's something that I worked on. Of course, I worked on several criminal justice bills, package bills. I think one of the things that I think our caucus, our delegation has been really good at is that not necessarily carrying large, massive bills, but getting amendments and strike all amendments and placeholders put into bills that drastically have an impact on legislation. And that all comes down to having a seat at the table and really excited about the future and the type of policy issues we'll be able to work on in regards to criminal justice reform, education reform, and a wide range of other issues that are very paramount.
Awesome. Rep. Ausley, tell us what you thought was the most impactful bill for your constituents in 2020.
Well, for me, it has to be the state employee pay raise. That is something that is, it cuts across our entire region. As hard as this economic closure has been for our region, it is not as hard as others and not as challenging, because we have state employees and university employees who were able to keep their jobs. But if we don't continue to recognize the value of those state employees by giving them a cost of living adjustment, which is really what the 3% pay increase is, that needs to happen every year. Any good business pays their employees and pays their employees first, and that is what we need to do as a state. So the fact that we started this session with a pay increase on both sides and ended up with a 3% across the board is impactful, not just for those employees, but for all the businesses across our community that rely on those employees to keep their doors open. So to me, that is the most important. And again, as we are uncertain as to what's going to happen with this budget, I am most concerned that those good steps that we have taken remain in whatever the budget scenario looks like going forward.
Awesome. Senator Montford, most impactful bill in 2020.
Thank you, Kenneth. Again, it's the state employees pay raise. The fact remains that I had a bill this year, unfortunately, that didn't quite make it across the finish line. But I think I've got a commitment from Senate leadership that for next year it'll get hopefully get across the line, and that is to consider state employee raises at the beginning of the process of the budget. What we historically do is we work through the budget, and at the end, then we say, okay, do we have enough money to give state employees a pay raise? And that's not the way good businesses are run. People who are critical of government often say, why don't you run government like a business? And I agree with that. I think we should. But good businesses, those that are successful, take care of their employees. They don't wait till the end of the year and say, we have anything left over, then we'll take care of pay raise for employees. We should, at state, we should do the same thing. We should, day one, when we start beginning discussion of the budget, we should assume that the state employees deserve at least a cost of living pay raise, and that can be done. It's real simple. It's a simple matter. It can be done. We just have to make the commitment. I believe and I sense that this is a bipartisan issue, it's a bipartisan support, and I think you'll see that passed in the very near future in terms of the process. Another issue, I think that a bill that passed, a bill I had was a rural economic development bill that passed, and that will have a tremendous amount of impact on all rural counties throughout the state. Let's don't forget that a year and a half ago, the Florida Chamber of Commerce did a study. And what we found out, or what they found out, which many of us knew all along, was that there were fewer jobs in the 35 rural counties in Florida today than there were 5 years ago. Fewer jobs. Now, former Governor Scott, Senator Scott now did a great job in bringing a lot of jobs into the state. But in my discussion with him, I would remind him those jobs are not coming to my rural Florida. And so there are, again, fewer jobs. If you look at rural Florida today, rural Florida is in a crisis, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's education, whether it's employment, it doesn't really matter. Rural Florida is in a crisis. That's why you see fewer jobs, fewer population, fewer young people staying at home in these rural counties. The bill that, my bill, the Rural Economic Development Bill, will go a long way in being able to attract good, clean business to these rural areas. We've got the Triumph funds that are there. Representative Shoaf served on that board, did a great job with that. He knows it in and out. There's a tremendous amount of money there that will come down for years to come. I'm talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that will come for economic development for these rural areas that were impacted by the oil spill. And even though these counties may not be a part of the original counties, there was spillover effect on that as well. So again, I think that the focus on the rural economic development this year was a huge success for rural Florida.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Senator. Now we have the opportunity to open up for questions. I want to hear from you all what your concerns are, what your thoughts are about anything that you've heard here today. And I know we have our first question from Ben Graybar. His question is, he saw in the Democrat the budget was $800 million short in April. He's curious how state expenditures are projected for the rest of the year and what might be unfunded or altered when that might be determined. Sounded like the Fed funding of $4.6 billion might fill the void depending on the duration of COVID impact. Can you all discuss, I think that report just came out. As he said, he saw it in the Democrat. I did see it online also. Can you all address that issue of what do you think happens, and who wants to take a crack at that?
I'll go first, I guess, because I sort of already referenced it in the outset. Senator Galvano sent out a really lengthy and informative letter to the senators last night that really addressed this issue, talking about the revenues being so down, $878 million for April. And I think they're waiting until the next revenue estimating meeting, according to this, to make the ultimate decision. But that is my grave concern, is that all these things that we've all talked about, all of these great steps forward we've taken for state employees, for our teachers, for affordable housing, for, you name it, for the environment, that all of that is potentially on the chopping block. I don't think anybody knows the answer to that yet, but I don't think we can completely pat ourselves on the back for this budget yet.
Got it. Anybody else want to address that question? Any other comments on it? Okay.
I'll take a stab at it. There are two schools of thought here. One is, let's get back into a special session immediately. We've got enough data now, especially the most recent one, and make the adjustments in the budget. That's one school of thought. The other school of thought is that if you look at Florida's budget, we have done, I think, a good job over the last several years, 15 years or so, we have a good healthy reserve. And, it's a rainy day fund. Well, it's raining. And so there are some who say we've got a good rainy day fund. We've got federal dollars that are coming. And there's two revenue streams. One is, and I'm not advocating this, but one is taxing online purchases, and the other, you've got the Seminole PAC out there. That's always a possibility. So there are two schools of thought. One is, let's get it on, let's get back in the session, let's address the issue now based on the data that we have. We'll have a good bit of data. The second school of thought is, why hurry? Why are we even talking about a special session? Let's wait and let dust settle and see just how bad the COVID resurgence is, and then let's address it. The downside to that second issue is that if you wait 6 months into the year, then the remaining 6 months you've got to absorb all the cuts in the budget, which makes it twice as hard. It's real simple. If you're going to lose money, you'd rather spread it out over 12 months versus 6. The good thing is that in terms of the Senate leadership, I can't speak, for the House, but for the Senate, I'm confident that our Senate leadership, they're good. They'll do what they think is best for Florida. I'm confident and I'm comfortable with the Senate leadership. I haven't worked with the House, so I can't speak for them. But I have it gives me some relief, if you will, just knowing who we have in the Senate that we're making these decisions.
Okay. Rep. Shoaf or Rep. Alexander, you all anything to add, or we want to move to the next question?
They hit a home run.
They did great.
All right. Next question I have up is a bill that was considered. This is from Leslie Powell Boudreaux. There was a bill considered but not passed that would have allowed for a moratorium on evictions following a hurricane. In light of the moratoria in place related to COVID-19, what are your perspectives on such a legislative remedy moving forward? Anyone who wants to jump in on that one?
Well, I absolutely agree with that. And, we're getting ready to be in the heart of hurricane season. and how we just look at emergency response in general and how that directly impacts people in our state. And so this COVID-19 has really revealed many of our weaknesses in our infrastructure, in our response mechanisms in regards to the health and well-being, and in regards to moratoriums, in regards to evictions. We've received numerous calls from students being threatened by landlords to be evicted because of COVID-19, and having federal guidelines in place and precedents in place to address some of those issues. And so I think we need to have a consistent across the board plan of action for these type of emergencies so that people don't have to assume they will know. So I absolutely do agree with that.
Okay.
Kenneth, I'll add something onto that. I think Rep. Alexander did a great job of explaining that. But also we have to keep in mind, and again, first I want to say I live in Port St. Joe, right? 12 miles from landfall of Hurricane Michael. And so it's a personal issue to me. I have a lot of friends that fell into this situation. And I'll tell you, you have to look at all sides. There's also a lot of people that may have 1 or 2 rental apartments or homes, and they're not wealthy. They struggle to pay their own bills. And when they lose that revenue stream of that tenant paying, they are in just as bad of a position. And so, yes, I would support legislation that would help protect those tenants, but also we have to make sure that on the backside, there's a payment plan. There's a way to make them whole, and we certainly can't penalize folks for that.
Sure. Thanks for those comments. And Rep. Ausley or Senator Montford, any of you want to address that issue?
Yeah, I would just real briefly. I agree with Representative Shoaf, and Alexander as well. I mean, we have to do something. I think that's where the state of the government should step in. We realize that the mortgage to be paid. If you have a rental place and you're depending on the rent to pay the mortgage, we've got to recognize that fact. I don't think we should, when we have something like COVID-19 or a hurricane, to go start throwing people out on the street. But I think we got to go the next step and say, now, how do we help the person who's also got the bills to pay, got the mortgage to pay? And that's why we have state government. And that's the reason we have a rainy day fund. That's the reason we have people elected to the Florida legislature to take the tax dollars and all that we have in this state, and let's take care of both, and that can happen.
Yeah.
And I'll just say, first of all, Leslie, thank you for all your work in legal services out in the Panhandle after the hurricane. I know y'all are still out there working, and you saw, the real implications of this. And so there it has to be a balanced solution. But what it points to is the real need for funding for affordable housing, for workplace housing, workforce housing, and again, we did that in this budget, assuming that this budget holds. That is one piece of the puzzle of trying to address the overall need. So this is one tool and strategy, but it's got to be a balanced approach. So thanks.
Absolutely. And Rep. Ausley, you referenced it, and I know it was a big deal this year. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund was fully funded for the first time, and as far as I can remember back, being fully funded. So that was a great job by everyone to make sure that affordable housing, that money gets in there for first-time home buyers, and that's what a lot of that money is used for. I noticed in there, I think we're waiting on a couple other questions, but I noticed that there were a couple of people asking about the teacher pay raise. And my understanding is that it's not quite across the board, but I may be wrong about that. So if you all could give some clarity as to how that money is going to be divvied up, is everybody going to get it across the board, or is there going to be a process? And some folks may get that raise and some folks may not.
Well, I guess that I would be the obvious one to try to answer that question. So let me tell you how complicated it is. It's not a simple matter. Let's just pay everybody a flat beginning starting salary, not beginning salary, but a starting salary, and there's a difference. When it first came out, the number was 47.5. So let's realize the fact that if you take the number 47.5 as a starting salary for teachers, there's only one district in the state one school district in the state that had a starting salary of $47,500, and I believe that was Monroe County, because the cost of living there is so high. And then you get into the discussion where if the cost of living is far less in one area than another, do you pay everybody $47,500? Let's take Liberty County next door. It has one of the lowest costs of living. If a teacher is hired in Liberty County, does that teacher get $47,500 versus a teacher in Palm Beach, a starting teacher that you pay that teacher $47,500? So there are a lot of different factors that go into this. And then to complicate things, there are thousands and thousands of teachers in the state that they're already teaching, that do not make the $47,500, which was the figure we were discussing. They don't make that now. If you have a new teacher right out of college with a starting salary of $47,500, and then next door, next classroom, you have a teacher that's been there 6 or 7 years, they're still not making $47,500. So the question then is, do you bring that teacher up to $47,500 and they all start at $47,500? We didn't budget enough money for that. Unfortunately, like many things, all of these decisions fall back on the individual school districts, which, as you know, this is a negotiable issue with the teacher union. So it's a very, very complicated issue. The bright spot, though, is that we are finally recognizing, and financially, that if we're going to continue to have a top-rate public school system in this state, then we've got to hire good employees. We've got to attract and retain some of the best and brightest people coming out of the universities. And so this is a great beginning. There's a lot of problems got to be worked out. They got a lot of issues that have to be addressed. But my position is real simple. You give us some money, we'll figure out a way to solve the problem. And we're not complaining. All of the issues that I just spoke about, it's not saying that we shouldn't do it. We should do it. And give us the money. We'll figure out a way to do it and do it equitably.
Got it. Anybody else want to comment on that? Anybody? Okay, they're going to let you handle it, Senator Montford. Any other questions? By the way, just to remind you, go to the participants portion of your down below of your Zoom call, and then you'll have something pop up on a window pop up on the right-hand side, and you'll be able to raise your hand. So if you have a question, feel free. Let's see. I'm looking for Amanda. Did I miss anybody?
Well, no, you did not. Front.
Okay. Well, I see we're at 11:47 right now. Anyways, this has been a great discussion. Thank you all for the opportunity. I'm going to give each of you all a few minutes to close. And
we do have 2 hands raised now.
Ah, we do. Okay. Let's see if we can get through a couple more questions. Let's see here. I'm trying to scroll down here. Who do we have, Amanda?
Sydney Bigham.
Yeah. Okay, Sydney, you're in the room now. You have a question for the delegation?
Good morning, everybody. Can y'all hear me okay?
We can.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for being here. I know that there was some major environmental legislation that was passed, and I was curious to know what your thoughts were about how that process went and about what else needs to be done to improve wastewater infrastructure and surface water quality and groundwater quality in our state.
All right. Who wants to take on that environmental question?
So I'm not going to get into this, and I can't get into the absolute specifics, but there was a unprecedented amount of money on water issues. And I think, there's been a continued press towards that, and it's vital. And again, the full funding for Florida Forever. So really putting money behind both water quality, water quantity, and land preservation. I think all of those things working together are going to help keep moving us forward, because the only thing we have, our comparative advantage against other states, is our natural resources, and we have to continue protecting those at all costs. So I am encouraged by the move that I see, and actually even the next speaker coming along who has indicated some work around climate issues. These are real issues that we have to address, and I'm glad to, again, I hope these are things that hold in this budget.
Absolutely. Anybody else want to? Rep. Ausley, I know you're an expert on that area, so thank you for those comments. I do have another question on turning to healthcare. Somebody wants to discuss a little bit about COVID funding there. It's Dale DeHart Grigas. Turning to healthcare, the COVID-19 relief funding is very supportive of hospitals and major healthcare systems, but not so much for smaller providers like pediatricians, et cetera. How do we fix this and keep our smaller businesses, our smaller medical businesses, I think is what he's referring to. How do we keep those businesses alive? Any comments on that? Who wants to take that one?
I'll try. Kenneth, tell me what the question is again.
Sure. So it's he wants to turn to the healthcare arena. The COVID-19 relief funding is supportive of hospitals and major healthcare systems, but not so much for the smaller providers. Those smaller might be a pediatrician or a couple pediatricians in a small practice. How do you fix this and keep these smaller businesses, those smaller medical providers alive through this?
It's a good question. I've heard that from some of the small providers in my 11 counties, scattered out. And rightfully so. Those dollars and the focus went to the hospitals and other larger providers because, quite frankly, you know, I'm not sure how well prepared we were for COVID-19 as the first, you know, blush money which are these larger organizations to deal with it, which is fine. But I think we also have to realize that we have other smaller providers, for example, in small rural hospitals, for example. And Representative Shoaf in my district, we share, I think, 10 counties together. We've got these little hospitals out there and clinics that are in desperate need. You talk about, you know, having a really, really heavy impact on them, the COVID-19 impact. It's there, and they're struggling anyway. So I think, you know, we need to take a breath, if you will, and when soon as we can, take a pause, and let's see how we can better fund these small providers as well, because they are a key piece of the formula in addressing any kind of pandemic that we have. We have to focus on those small providers as well.
Absolutely. And my understanding is that some of them may be able to get some funding from the PPP program. I haven't heard that that's something that's prohibited for them. So hopefully that's something that they can still go after. Wanted to recognize someone had a comment on that we need to hire the best candidates for teachers coming from universities. However, they also need to be trained for the compassionate nature of the job, not just the pay. And I think that's a valid comment. I want to move to another question. We've got a few more minutes. Assuming a decrease in budget based upon tax revenues, where do each of the participants suggest we make some cuts so that we know that we're going to get less money? Do you all suggest I think part of what Dan is asking is, do we take a across the board cut of everything, or where do you all think we can make some cuts that might meet that that might meet our budget and still allow us to have a balanced budget?
Kenneth, I'll say one of the biggest parts of our budget was both Department of Corrections and healthcare, and so you have to can't help but look there first. With Department of Corrections, they can't take any more cuts. In fact, we need to increase the funding to cover salary or pay raises, which we did this year. But even then, we need to do a little bit more, a lot more. But one way I believe that we can cut money from that is to look at sentencing reforms, do smart criminal justice reforms, and take a look at some of the nonviolent crimes that people are locked up for extended sentences, and really change the system a little bit. You know, people don't need to be sentenced to 20 years in prison because they got caught with some marijuana. They need to go into rehab. They need help, and it's very, very expensive to keep them in prison. So that's something that I look forward to working. I know Senator Brandis is championing that, and I think we're going to continue to see progress in that area.
Yeah, and I know you all have worked on that. Rep. Alexander, I know you've worked on those issues specifically. Do you have a comment on funding for Department of Corrections and how you feel that could possibly help us to meet our budget items?
Well, I think that's an excellent point, and I think we need to begin to take more preventative measures and being more proactive in how we engage our communities and how we look at our criminal justice system in general. We're not going to mass incarcerate ourselves out of the problem. And I think holistically, when we look at our budget and how we'll move forward in regards to addressing healthcare issues and other infrastructure issues, in regards to investing in health response and rapid response measures post-pandemic and during pandemic, it's going to be important that we take a holistic approach and significant tax cuts and breaks for the top 1%. I understand that we have an obligation of investing in our communities across the spectrum, but to be quite frank, trickle-down economics does not work. And I think it's important that we invest where the most vulnerable are. You look at poverty, you look at those folks on the front line that are dying every single day, struggling to meet ends meet. We have an obligation to that. And I think there's a healthy balance in a very thoughtful and pragmatic way that we'll have to begin to remove some of these layers to have a serious conversation about how we move forward. So it'll have to be a comprehensive approach.
We've got another question that I think, Senator Montford, I hate to cut you off. I know you want to get a comment in here, but I want to go, because we only have a few more minutes left, and then I'm going to let you close. And Senator Montford, if you want to include whatever your comments might be in your close. But there's a really good question that I want to make sure that we get to that Danielle Thomas just offered. She says that one bill that did not pass this session was the school safety bill. As we work on returning students back to school buildings in the fall, how do we work to address school safety, specifically the school safety drills that are traumatic to many of our students, especially our youngest students? A great question, and I think in light of COVID and the fact that we may not know when students are coming back, it's a great comment. Any insights or any thoughts about school safety and that issue?
Well, I'll take a stab at it, Kenneth. I'm interested in what Senator Montford has to say, because he's the go-to on all things education. But I remember that bill. It was 7065, I think. I look forward to readdressing that next session. It's unfortunate that it did not pass. It would have clarified the training for the Guardian program. It would have strengthened school mental health services, and a whole host of other things. But that's something that I look forward to discussing in the upcoming session.
Senator Montford, do you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, I'll be glad to. I think, well, first of all, we have to, let's face it, we have 67 school districts. They are significantly big changes or big differences in those districts. There's one rural district that, the superintendent said, I've got a gun on every floor. I carry a gun on my ankle myself. I'm ready. And he's serious. And then that's what the community wants. And then there are other districts that will say, we don't want that we don't want teachers carrying guns and so on and so forth. So first of all, I think we've got to look at it district by district. But I think more important than that, we have to realize this is not an issue. This is not a challenge that school districts alone can address. This is a community issue. It is not a school issue. It used to irritate me when people would say, well, this school had a drug problem. Well, no, this school doesn't have a drug problem. This community has a drug problem. The same students who go to the school go to the church. I don't hear you saying First Baptist Church or the Catholic Church is having a drug problem. So let's don't put all of the blame and all of the solving this problem on school districts. Do they have a role in it? Absolutely. There's nothing more important than the safety of our children and the staff and others who come onto these campuses. But quite frankly, when people say, my child should feel safe at school, that's absolutely true. But I hope that same parent would say, my child needs to be safe when they go to church, or my child needs to be safe when they go to the mall. And it is providing safety, a safe environment for the children and others on the school is a tremendous problem. It's to the point where some people now are saying Schools look and feel like prisons when you walk in. So how do you deal with it? And that's something that that society in general, the community at large, has to address. It can't be something that just a school district can address. It's got to be community-wide.
Great. And as a father of a couple of kids that are going to be entering school pretty soon, it's a concern of our community. And thank you all for trying to address it. I know we could have another seminar on that issue just alone, I'm sure, of school safety. And I know the state.
Hey, can I add one thing real quick?
Sure.
And it's it's a piece of the safety issue. Long before Parkland occurred, for those unfortunate deaths, and it was terrible. 2 years before that, the number one concern among superintendents in this state, unanimously, was mental health. Not the budget, not the amount of testing, mental health. If there's a way that you could gauge the mental health crisis, if you will, that exists in this society, not just schools, but everything that happens in the society shows up at school, whether it's unemployment, whether it's abuse at home. A lot of these children don't have mental health problems themselves, but their families have, and they bring it to school. Mental health is a tremendous challenge for this state, which fits into the safety issue as well. If we don't address the mental health issues that this society faces, and they manifest themselves in school, we will have a lot of trouble. But we have got to be able to address the mental health issues that exist in these schools when they bring them to the schools.
Absolutely. Thank you all for being a part of this. I see we're at our closing time. I'm going to give you all about 30 seconds to just each say any closing remarks that you might have. Rep. Alexander, start with you.
Well, thank you so much, Kenneth. And I do apologize by getting up and getting down. I have a 2-year-old toddler that I'm playing daddy daycare for, so I have to get up every once in a while. But I want to thank you for this forum and this opportunity to be with you today. And we have some significant challenges ahead of us. But I'm optimistic that with reasonable thinking and people that have good motives to the core of good government, and good government is centered around the idea of helping the least of these and being a voice for those that do not have a voice. And there's so many people crying out. Yes, there's cynicism out there, but people are looking for direction. They're looking for exact thinking. They're looking for measured people that have integrity, that can make decisions that impact their quality of life. And so we are excited to have a strong delegation here in North Florida. I look forward to working with my colleagues as we address these issues as we move forward, and we stay in the trenches to fight for people every single day. And Kenneth, we want to thank you and thank all of my colleagues for serving, and looking forward to the future and rolling back up our sleeves if we go into special session, which I assume we will, in regards to where we are to address the issues and fight for the people of North Florida and our districts every single day.
Thank you, Rep. Rep. Ausley, final comments.
Thanks, Kenneth. And I just want to, as we're moving forward with these budget issues and issues related to COVID, I think there's 2 issues that I would like to put out there. Number one is childcare. Childcare is, we now know, no one can deny childcare is essential to get our economy back running, and we all know the importance of early learning. So I've been joining a lot of national conversations about asking for public investment in childcare as a public good, and I would love to, anybody out there that's interested in joining that conversation, I'd love to, because it's something that's always been on my heart, but it's the need for it is real, and I'm hoping this is an opportunity. Secondly, rural broadband. It is another area where people that don't have access to the internet can't go to school, can't go to work, can't get medical care. And that is something where I believe the federal government and our state government are going to need to step in so that we can make sure that we are really including everyone in our state, in our economy, and our recovery. So great opportunity to have this dialogue, and I look forward to continuing with you guys, and everybody stay safe.
Thank you, Rep. Senator Montford.
Thank you. Thank you again for hosting this. I just want to make one comment on the budget. The question was asked, where do you cut? But I don't think it should go unnoticed, the fact that at least for the 10 years that I've been in the Senate, we've had a very lean budget. We've made tough decisions for 10 years. And we're not like some of the other states where you can go into a budget and find fact, if you will. There's very little, if any, fat in our budget. What we do have, though, is a $4 billion rainy day reserve. That's why you have a savings account stacked back. When tough times come, you can draw on it. So I would encourage the leadership and those who will be making these decisions, you know, before we go in and start making cuts to the bone, you know, let's tap into the reserve. I've been on the Senate Large Appropriation Committee and 6 different subcommittees in 10 years. So I know the budget in and out. There's not a lot of fat there. So I think what we've done, let's rely on what we've been building up now for 10 years, and that's a good rainy day account. In summation, it's meant for me, I'm leaving. Somebody said it's bittersweet, and I said, no, it's not bittersweet, it's bitter. I don't want to leave, but it's, you know, it's called the term limits, and but it's been a wonderful 10 years. I've thoroughly enjoyed working with my colleagues and working for people all over the state. And especially here in North Florida. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Thank you for your service, Senator. We appreciated working with you over your service over your last 10 years. Rep. Shoaf, final comments.
Thanks, Kenneth, and I really appreciate you putting this together. As I think about all of the different people that I've met over the years that have gone through the Leadership Tallahassee program, I know that the people on this call right now are the future leaders of not only Tallahassee, Leon County area, but also the whole state, and some may even go on beyond that. So I'm excited to see so much buy-in and involvement from your members, and look forward to working with you and the other North Florida delegation members and everyone on this call today. Feel free to reach out anytime. Let's make some good things happen this next year.
Absolutely. Thanks to each of you all. We appreciate you all being here. Thanks for all the participants, and thanks, of course, to Barbara and Amanda and Rebecca and the LT staff for helping to put this together. I think it was a great conversation. We hope to continue to have it. And with that, we'll sign off. Thanks for everybody for participating.